you've scrapped all that again to go back to East versus West. I know you've said tradition because you're in Indiana, but my suspicion is that if it had all worked to the satisfaction of the league, you guys would have continued those innovations. So what was the rationale behind going back to the old way, if you can say that without using the word tradition, traditional, or any version thereof?
Operating under those rules, we returned to the East versus West format and the 48-minute game format because we thought what we were doing was not working. I'd say I think people uniformly were critical of last year's All-Star game and felt it was not a competitive game. And it was not a position held solely by the league. I think the players collectively recognized as well that it wasn't what they wanted to see either.
So right there, you see why they changed the format back to the original All-Star game. Choosing your own teammate was great for television drama to see who got skipped over. But as far as on the court, the 2023 All-Star game was some of the shittiest product you ever seen on television.
They had not put their best foot forward. And I'd say Andre Iguodala now, who is the executive director, former player of the Players Association, I think shares that view with the league office that we're not necessarily looking for players to go out there as if it's, the finals certainly, but we need players to play defense. We need them to care about this game. And the feeling was that maybe, and I'll take responsibility for it, as you know, I used to run something called NBA Entertainment, that we'd gotten carried away a bit with the entertainment aspect. And by that, I'm not just talking about the halftime or the intros per se. One of the things we heard from the players, and I think this goes to the draft, was on one hand, now you're telling us you want us to play this as if it were a real game, but there's nothing about it that feels like a real game. You have us standing up on stage, operating through this draft, then once the intros start, we get cold, we're standing there forever, we don't get to go through our usual routines, then come halftime, you're adding not just a little bit of extra time, but a lot of extra time, so we get cold in the locker rooms. And I think we sat down with the players and we listened to them and we said, all right, we have to return to basketball, back to basketball, so to speak.
That's interesting, the timing of that sit down, because we've seen in quite a few years of just this All-Star format, but that timing is not ironic. They knew the television deal was going to be up, and they needed the 2024 All-Star game to be a great product. So when they're pitching themselves in a new TV deal, they could potentially get a similar deal for All-Star weekend, whether it be a Friday, a Saturday night, or even parts of Sunday on streaming exclusively, the same way that NFL did with Wild Card Weekend on Peacock. The NFL got over $100 million just for 1 or 2 games. The NBA could have leveraged All-Star Weekend in a similar fashion.
It's about the game, and that's ultimately how we're going to be judged. I think sometimes when you're in the market for an All-Star game and you're having fun at all the events and the parties and all those other things, people often are saying to me, I've been doing this for a lot of years, before the game even takes place on Sunday night, it's been a fantastic All-Star weekend. And then, of course, if the game is lousy, then you all just doing your jobs and representing what's happening here to the world, the reports are it was a lousy All-Star because the game wasn't that exciting. And frankly, fans are able to vote by what they watch too. They have so many options. So the thought was here, we sat down with the players, we said, let's return to a focus on the game of basketball. Let's come pretty close to your typical routine. We still want the opportunity to introduce to fans around the world the All-Star rosters.
Once again, there's that language, introducing fans to around the world. The NBA now is a global league. They're fully invested into this league being global, and that's where their growth is going to come from. The verbiage is real important. And it's not ironic that, quote unquote, back to basketball is happening this season when TV negotiations are up.
We still want to have a little bit of fun at halftime, but so just add a slight amount of time, and let's see what we get. My sense is it's a combination of discussions that the leadership of the players are having with the All-Stars. I think discussions Joe Dumars is having directly with players, frankly, having Joe Dumars and his credibility in the league office. I think we're going to see a good game tomorrow night.
Now, his last comment right there is very interesting. I think we're going to see a good game tomorrow. Remember, he did a sit down with the players, he got feedback. They kind of tailored the game to being more of a game with the resting in between halftime and the way the game starts. And he was expecting a good product. So you see how important the league was trying to position this All-Star weekend. Not only the game, but just the overall All-Star weekend. From the dunk contest to the skills challenge. This is a global event. This is how they're pitching it to the streaming companies. Most Americans could view the All-Star weekend as like, oh, I'm not really watching it. But Adam Silver is positioning this as a global event. Other people around the world may find this more interesting than we do in the States. And this was a great opportunity for the league to slightly put on a greater All-Star weekend than they did the year before. And they could have leverage on positioning this as a global event to streaming and get a bigger bag out of it. All these things, from the play-in to the in-season tournament to All-Star weekend, these are pieces of real estate to sell to streaming. And just seeing the results of the 2024 All-Star game, it looked like the players had dropped the fucking bag. And you've seen the disappointment from Adam Silver, even when announcing the winners after the game.
And to the Eastern Conference All-Stars, you scored the most points. Well, congratulations.
You could hear the disappointment in Adam Silver's voice completely.
To the Eastern Conference All-Stars, you scored the most points. Well, congratulations.
You know, Silver looked at the players thinking, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that when I pitch it to streaming? The players gave him no breathing room with that type of performance. But once again, even though in the States, we don't really tend to kind of respect the All-Star weekend anymore, globally, this is still an event. So we'll see how the NBA cleverly tries to market the All-Star weekend in a certain way, especially to get a bigger bag and use it as a piece of real estate on streaming. The ace in their pocket is the All-Star weekend is a global event. Peep the language Adam Silver uses when he describes the league's audience throughout this press conference as a global audience.